like to bring in former federal prosecutor Neama Rahmani, as well as senior national correspondent Brian Entin, who was live there in Plymouth. So, Neama, let's start with you. Closing arguments just wrapped after 5 weeks of gut-wrenching testimony. We just heard from the judge there giving instructions to the jury. What stands out to you from both sides? Final words to the jury.
What stands out to me, Nicole, is really you see the prosecution trying to walk back some of their overly aggressive opening statements, where they said that Lindsay Clancy was manipulating her doctors. And even during the course of the trial, there were some insinuations that her suicide attempt was either exaggerated or maybe even that her symptoms were fake. Obviously, that didn't sit well with the jurors. So you saw them trying to talk about mental illness and the fact that being mentally ill doesn't mean you're legally insane or criminally responsible in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Of course, the defense tried to put the public health system and Lindsay Clancy's mental health providers on trial. The best defense is a good offense, and it was very effective, in my opinion. If I had to make a prediction right now, I wouldn't be surprised if the jurors return a not criminally responsible verdict, or even if they mistrial, that the vote is significantly in favor of the defense. I do think they have the advantage right now.
All right, very interesting. All right, Brian, over to you. Just talk about the mood inside of that courtroom today after 5 weeks of testimony and so much attention.
Yeah, and I think what Neama said is really important because I've noticed it since I've been covering the trial since the beginning. The prosecution's message has changed throughout the trial in terms of what Lindsay Clancy's motive was, whether she was mentally ill or not mentally ill. And it's been sort of hard to follow. Yesterday with their final witnesses, there were things coming out that had never been said before about her possibly being financially motivated to do all of this, and then kind of walking back some of that in the closing. So I think for the jury, it's been a hard sort of message to follow. It hasn't been concise. Nonetheless, the mood out here has been tense. I mean, this has been going on for weeks. Inside the courtroom today, it was full. It was jam-packed. You've got media, but then you've also got mostly women who have been following the case, women in pink shirts who are supporters of Lindsay Clancy, who want her to be found not guilty. And then you've got women in white shirts who say they are supporting Lindsay Clancy's children and believe that maybe while she did have mental illness, she should still be responsible for their deaths and there should be a guilty verdict. So it's been tense, and you're looking live now. It seems like any moment. They had a quick sidebar, and soon it should be officially going out to the jury when the deliberations will begin, Nicole.
Yeah, absolutely. And my producer tells me that the jury has, in fact, been dismissed to begin deliberations, Brian. So that is now happening. Neama, over to you. So Brian talked about this in his report, that the judge is now giving this jury a manslaughter option. Talk about why he is now doing that and how it potentially changes things.
Yeah, Brian raised two very important points, and we're getting in the legal weeds a bit, but the burden of proof matters and the jurisdiction matters. So obviously, it's pretty well known in Massachusetts, the burden's on the prosecution to prove that the defendant is criminally responsible beyond a reasonable doubt, the highest standard in the law. In certain states, I'm sitting in California, the burden's on the defense. And in the federal system, the burden's on the defense by clear and convincing evidence. So the law favors the defense in Massachusetts. And there's two ways to get insanity there: not knowing right from wrong and not being able to control your actions. So the question is, why did the lawyers ask for a manslaughter charge? I can tell you the conventional wisdom is prosecutors don't like these lesser included charges. First degree murder in Massachusetts, if it's premeditated, or if it's really cruel, or there's an atrocity, mandatory life sentence. Second degree, possibility of parole. But manslaughter only carries a potential 20-year maximum sentence. So normally prosecutors think that's a loss. You don't want the jurors to return some sort of split or compromise verdict on a lesser count. But in this particular case, given the facts and the law, I wouldn't be surprised if the Commonwealth and the prosecution thinks, look, if we get manslaughter and we don't get a not guilty because Lindsay Clancy's not criminally responsible, that's probably a win given the state of the evidence here.
All right, and Brian, over to you before we wrap this up. We talked about what it was like inside of the courtroom. What's it like outside of the courthouse? We know a lot of those supporters have been gathering there as well. What are people telling you about maybe how long they think this jury will be out?
Yeah, I mean, most of the people who have been outside tried to get inside, either in the courtroom where there's an overflow room that they actually set up so people could watch a feed of what was going on. So most people are still inside. They wanted to be inside for the closings. They'd been here for all the trial outside, and they wanted to be inside for the end. In terms of how long this is going to take, I wish we knew. I mean, over the last couple of weeks, I've interviewed several jury consultants who, their job is to study the jury, who believe that it's going to take quite some time, and that, I hate to even say this, but there could even be a hung jury if, in fact, they're not able to agree on whether or not they think Lindsay Clancy is responsible, whether or not she was in the psychosis. I mean, think about how many different experts there have been. It's been a complex trial, and what's been so confusing is you had different medical experts, like a countless number of them, on both sides, giving different diagnoses and different theories about what Lindsay Clancy was going through. So they're going to have to sift through all of that. And I'll tell you, Nicole, sitting in the courtroom, looking at the jury, it's a smart bunch. I mean, they're dressed professionally. It's mostly women. It's mostly women over the age of 40. I'm trying to figure out exactly who the alternates were and how that's going to kind of figure into things. But you can tell they're taking this seriously. They've been taking notes throughout the trial. It's not like anybody's nodding off or falling asleep like we've seen in other trials. I mean, they are there to do the job, which makes me think it may take longer, that they're going to want to go back and go through a lot of the evidence.
All right, Brian Entin, live outside of the courthouse. Neama Rahmani, former federal prosecutor. Thanks to you both.